If you want talk, games, and fun all rolled into one, well, you've come to the right place. This is The Game Show, where host Bradley Clarke and his special guests talk about the world of television game and competition shows. But Bradley's guests aren't here to just talk. They came to play a game as well. What will today's topic be? What game does Bradley have planned? There's only one way to find out.
It's time to start the show.
You heard the man. Welcome to The Game Show. And here's your host, the Bradster himself, Bradley Clarke.
That is theme music to my ears. Thank you so much, Austin Angelo. I'm Bradley Clarke, and welcome to another exciting episode of The Game Show, the talk show all about the world of television game and competition shows. And once again, The Game Show has hit another milestone, as this is episode number 25. Yes, we have hit the quarter-century mark, and I want to thank all of you, the listeners and fans of The Game Show, for your continued support of the show. It truly means a lot. And I hope you like this episode as much as you've liked the previous 24. And I'm sure you will, because I have yet another great guest to introduce. My guest on this 25th episode is certainly no stranger to the game show world, as he has written for, produced, and executive produced many a game show. In fact, when I'm his age, I hope to have a resume that's at least half as good as his, because the amount of game shows he's worked on is simply incredible. And here are just some of them.
Here are the 8 contestants who will take part in tonight's show. One of them will walk away with up to $1 million. The rest will leave with nothing, as round by round they're voted off as the weakest link.
Welcome to the weakest link.
Big bucks and whammies is back, bigger and better than ever. It's time to play Whammy, the all-new Press Your Luck.
Tonight from Hollywood, a television event like no other. 6 celebrities face off on the greatest game shows of all time. Movie star Leslie Nielsen, Trading Spaces Paige Davis, NSYNC's Lance Bass, actress Kathy Najimy, Saturday Night Live's Tim Meadows, and Baywatch babe Brandy Roderick. All on Game Show Marathon.
Today, we've got wins that'll make you grin. Fails on an epic scale. And stuff you can't get enough of. Plop your butts on down. This is Webheads.
A supermodel. Mount Everest.
Things that are tall.
From the ABC studios in New York, this is the $100,000 Pyramid.
As I said, those are just some of the shows he has worked on, because if I played a clip from all of them, I'd certainly run out of time. Oh, and not only does he work on game shows, but he's also a game creator and is the man behind the brand new game That Was Awkward, which you can find online and in select retail stores. Joining me on the line now to talk about his game show career, as well as his game That Was Awkward, is fellow game show enthusiast, Aaron Solomon. Aaron, welcome to the game show.
Thank you for having me on.
You are very welcome. But Aaron, I gotta tell you, you're here on a very special episode because this is my 25th episode of the game show. Oh, I wish you could see the balloons. They're dropping from the ceiling right now as I speak.
The match game 25 should lower from the ceiling.
That's right. That's right. And not only that, you're my first guest who's actually created a game that is part of my extensive board game collection.
You're one of the customers.
Yes, I am one of the customers. I'm helping you out, as you are helping me out.
Well, I appreciate that.
And that's where I want to start our conversation, by talking about That Was Awkward. But looking ahead, we're going to talk about some of your other game show ventures, as you've done a lot in the industry. I hope that my resume stacks up to yours one day.
One show at a time, it builds up, and I've been very fortunate that as one show ends, it's not been too terribly long before the next one comes along. So, yeah, very fortunate in that respect.
And later on, we're going to play the game of the day. And right here on the game show, I'm bringing back a show that you actually worked on for you to play. And we'll get to that in a little bit. So let's start talking. You ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So now, for the listeners who've never heard of the game That Was Awkward until right now, Why don't you talk about the game, how you play it, and how you came up with the idea?
Honestly, the idea came around shortly after the success of Cards Against Humanity, and I was really intrigued by the fact that, we're in this 21st century world where everything is on apps and everything is virtual reality, and yet somehow in the midst of all this, there's this old-fashioned brick and mortar, as I call it, game that people are getting together on weekends with physical cards and playing a game. And it managed to get a lot of popularity without too much publicity even. I know the guys who created it didn't even have it in stores for the longest time. I think you had to order it directly from them, so it was really a word-of-mouth popularization. So I had a chance to play it a couple times, and I got the idea behind it, and I figured out kind of what I liked about it, and also some of the things that I wished were there, which, for my 2 cents, I don't know if you've ever played Cards Against Humanity, it's kind of like playing a Mad Lib where you're having to fill in the blanks with these really perverse things. So instead of just being a generic noun or whatever, it would be like your grandmother's placenta or, something really provocative and edgy. But what I felt was missing from a game like that is the ability for the player to not just use the cards that you're dealt, but to actually come up with your own ideas and kind of personalize the experience. So I then set about for the next year developing a game that basically played on that same notion of kind of adult-oriented, like you have to be 18 and over because it deals with some salacious areas and occasionally scatological. But I really wanted to create something that was based on each individual player's experience. So that was awkward. The way it plays is you sit in a circle, alternating boy-girl ideally, but the biggest thing is you don't want to sit next to your partner if you have one. So your girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife cannot be sitting immediately next to you. That's a key part of the game. And when it's your turn, you draw one card from the do this pile and one card from the say this pile. And your job is to do whatever it tells you to do while at the same time saying whatever it tells you to say. And each card has a point value ranging from 1 to 5, depending on how awkward on the awkward meter that task is. And once you've performed your task together, the rest of the group has to vote thumbs up, thumbs down if they think you did it sufficiently. The majority says yes, then you get the points. And if it's too awkward for you, you can always pass on one or both of them, but then you give up the chance to win those points. So for the pure game player, like I know you are and I am too, of course we want to play for points and go for the gold, but really this game is about revealing personal characteristics. So for example, you might draw like a 1-point card that says hop on one foot. And then maybe the say this card would be sing the national anthem. And you'd be surprised how many people feel like singing in public is the most awkward thing that they could do if they don't consider themselves a singer. But the different awkwardness levels really vary and ratchet up. So I know the very first time I ever played the game, I said, okay, well, I'll be one of the contestants because I should be willing to play my own game. And of course, right out of the gate, I had to cry like a baby while at the same time pantomiming my personal masturbation technique. So that was an interesting first turn. But it also just made your show officially above the G level. I apologize for that.
First time, 2019, a whole new year for the game show.
Yeah, that's right. No holds barred. That's exactly why you don't sit next to your significant other, because it's fun when it's somebody that you don't know and have never really kind of engaged in that level of intimacy with. Although, as you probably noticed, the game never goes to like an NC-17 level. This isn't a sex game per se, but it might be like talk about an experience you had or give somebody a back rub, or I think, there's one that says give someone a lap dance with your clothes on. So, it's silly, but it's just a little bit of an invasion of personal space that some people find too much, and some people, you're surprised to find out, have no problem with it at all.
You mentioned a couple of the types of cards you might find in the game, and I want to know how you came up with them. Did you just sit in a room and say, what can I make people do or say that would really make them feel awkward?
I developed this over the course of a year, like I said, and during that year, I had 3 different game testing nights. So I invited couples over, singles over, straight, gay, all different combinations of people. I had some couples come to more than one of them just to kind of see how they felt it went from each session to the next. And each time I played it, I wrote some more stuff. And after the game was over, I basically said, hey, how did you guys feel about the material? Was there anything that was awkward in not a good way? Because that's the one thing I didn't want to do, is create an awkward card that's going to bring up some truly uncomfortable, unpleasant memories. For example, there was one card that I had early on that said, talk talk about the last time you cried. And when I came up with it, my dream scenario was you get some really like macho alpha guy who gets it and he's like, I cried during the Notebook, or, something like that you're surprised to learn about him. But then I realized, well, this can actually go a number of different ways. If they're like, oh, I cried when my mother passed away or something, and it's like, oh, God, we don't even want to go into that area. I tried to kind of keep the level of awkwardness, things that you secretly might want to know about somebody, but would never have a reason to ask them to do. And this card kind of gives you the license to find that out. So it was really about being a little provocative without going over the line. And with each card, I kind of asked people, what do you think of this? Is this too much? Is this the right awkward level? Should you be getting more or less points for doing this? And then invariably at these sessions, other people would be like, what you should do? You should have a card that says this. And sometimes I'd be like, that's a great idea. And do you mind if I use it? And so I would incorporate the ideas that came out of the actual game testing. The other big thing that I learned, and this is to anybody who's developing a game, I highly encourage you, once you have it down on paper, to test it out, put it on its feet, because there's things you don't necessarily find out about. For example, if there's a card that just said you have to say Nickelback is my favorite band of all time or something like that, and it was such a prescribed quote that you had to say that there was no room for anybody to personalize it. And once you've heard it once, if it comes up again, you're like, oh yeah, I've heard that card. But the ones they had more fun with is ones where you had to actually put in your own take on it. So it might be like, say the 3 things you think are sexiest about the person to your right. So what you find out on New Year's Eve, if you were to play that game a month later, someone else might get it and talk about somebody else, and it'll be an entirely different experience. So those are the kinds of cards that I found just through testing seem to be the most satisfying and most fun to play.
And that's why you're a professional.
I try to be.
It's true for not just board game creations, but for game show creations. I mean, some of your favorite shows of all time go through so many test runs. And even if you watch the pilots of some of these shows, there's a lot of things that are sometimes different than what actually go to air.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, unfortunately, there used to be, going back to the 70s and the 80s, that if they wanted to do a game show, if it was Mark Goodson, they would do a pilot, but even leading up to that, they'd spend 3 months in a boardroom or conference room just playing and tweaking and testing. And the culture that we're in now is that if ABC puts on a show and it's a hit, all of a sudden NBC and CBS are like, quick, we got to get our version of that. So they rush these shows to the air, and sometimes what you'll see is kind of these half-baked ideas, and sometimes they have pretty significant format flaws that, God forbid, come up on air. And I've seen that happen before, and it's just so uncomfortable because you just know that it's a matter of the network and the producers just not having fully tested it enough.
And I'll give you another hint to the game of the day. The game we're going to play is somewhat related to what you just said.
Ooh! Okay.
Now, I know you have some more exciting news because you created another game, and it's coming out in 2019. So why don't you talk a little bit about that?
So Endless Games is the company that produces That Was Awkward. And actually, I sold them another game at the end of last year. It's coming out, I think, in June of this year. And it's called AKA, or also known as. And it's a very different game. I've been telling all my game show friends that the purists will probably enjoy this game more than That Was Awkward because it's not really a party game in the sense of being provocative and edgy and kind of finding things out. This one is more of a word game. And the premise of it is I'll give you a category, and then I will tell you the answer, but I will say it in different words than the actual answer. And you have to tell me what the real answer is. So, for example, if I said the category was Tom Cruise movies, and the answer is also known as Assignment Unachievable, you would say
Mission Impossible.
There you go. And if I said it was Uppermost Pistol, you would say
Top Gun.
Top Gun. There you go.
I'm loving this already,
so
Aaron.
That's the essence of the game. Yeah. I'm actually having some people over tomorrow, as a matter of fact. We're trying to hopefully negotiate an exclusive deal with a major retailer. So we're going to videotape just a living room run-through of people playing. And God willing, you all will see it in a major store come the middle of this year.
And I, for one, am a game show purist, so I will certainly be looking out for that game.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I love my word games. You know that.
Me too.
And speaking of word games, I want to let the listening audience know how we actually know each other. Aaron and I met when I had the unbelievable opportunity to work on ABC's The $100,000 Pyramid as a production assistant during Season 3. And Aaron's been a co-executive producer on the show from Seasons 1 through 3. And on the first day on the job, I got to be a stand-in contestant for a rehearsal game. And while I was sitting in the winner's circle, we struck up a conversation about the show. And in that moment, I truly did feel like a winner because I was not only living out a dream by sitting in the actual winner's circle, but I was talking about game shows with someone who appreciates the genre as much as I do.
Yeah, I remember there was something we were talking about. We touched on a game show reference, and you pulled some really obscure reference out, and I said, uh-oh, he's one of us.
I believe we were talking about the different photos that are on the walls around the building, and I brought up how most of them were $20,000 pyramid photos from the 70s because those were the ABC episodes.
Right, and you're talking about like which ones were shot in New York and which ones were shot in L.A., and I was like, oh, God, he knows all this stuff, so he really has the same DNA as we do.
And I'm proud to say that I share the same game show DNA with you and many of the other individuals I met while working at the $100,000 Pyramid. And I'm actually curious as to how it all began for you, because ever since I was 7 years old, I knew that I wanted to be part of the game show industry. So was that the same for you? Did your game show aspirations start at a young age? And who first introduced you to game shows?
You know, it was my mom, actually, who first planted the seed. I sort of joked with people that, you know, most kids are raised on Mr. Rogers and Sesame Street, and I feel like I was raised on Match Game and Family Feud because it was just always on from an early age. I just remember Richard Dawson. My mom just thought he was the best, and constantly having that on the TV and hearing the sound effects and seeing all the chase lights and the moving turntables on game shows. And, you know, as a kid, it's like, what could be better than that? It's like Transformers, but as a TV show. And then there's a game, and people are winning money, and it's exciting. And music. And I think the test of any true game show fan is, would you ever call in sick to school just so you could watch the entire morning lineup of game shows? And you may not be of the right generation for that because they didn't have game shows from like 9 to 11:30 when you were growing up. But for me, that was the thing. So I just got a full dose of all the game shows that were on in the 80s, and I couldn't wait until I was 13 years old, and then I could actually try out for Teen Week. So actually, as soon as I turned 13, it was like, yeah, I'm getting my bar mitzvah. Yeah, that's all good. But the biggest thing I wanted to do was get on a game show. And I ended up trying out for and becoming a contestant on Scrabble with Chuck Woolery. It was amazing. I ended up being a 4-day champion and paid off a year of my college. And it was sort of my first taste of, you know, actually being part of the industry, albeit on the contestant side. And funny enough, the contestant coordinator that I had on that show, her name is Laura Chambers. You probably know the name, I'm guessing, just because you know everything. But for anybody who that name isn't familiar, Laura was the co-host of Club AM, which was the morning show on Game Show Network.
Who is Laura Chambers? Wow, that is an interesting question. Laura Chambers is this kind of slightly off-balance person, and she's a mom, and she's a fiance, and like all those other things too. Club AM is truly a great thing. It's changed my whole entire life.
Laura Chambers, weekday mornings on Club AM.
It was like a series of kind of live interstitials that they would do in between reruns of library shows. And I went and took a tour of GSN, and as soon as she saw me, she said, oh my God, you were my contestant in 1988. You won this amount of money. And she has one of these photographic memories, and she ended up putting in a good word for me, and I ended up getting an internship for the summer of my sophomore year of college with GSN. And this was right at the beginning of their launch, and that's where I met Bob Bowden, who continues to be my industry mentor, and he helped me get my first assistant job and then my first writing job, and then it took off from there.
I've heard a lot of great game show stories doing the game show, Aaron, but that story definitely is near the top of the list. So I'm very curious. Talk about being an intern at Game Show Network when it was first starting out. What did you do?
Oh, man. So this was 95. So it launched in 94, and I joined on there the summer of 95, which is when I was back from school. They put me for the first couple of weeks on Club AM, which was their morning show. And because it was mainly targeting the East Coast, they wanted to go live at 9 a.m. Eastern, which meant 6 a.m. Pacific. So I actually would show up at 5 in the morning. And when I say show up, I would ask my stepdad to give me a ride to the studio, which amazingly he did every day. And I remember my first day there, I walked in the door, the producer, Brian Kahn, who's a friend of mine still to this day, said, hey, welcome to the show. Oh, by the way, this is our guest for today. You might know him. This is Gene Wood, the announcer from Family Feud. I'm like, you don't need to introduce who Gene Wood is to me. Of course I know who Gene Wood is.
It's time for the Family Feud. Introducing the Snide-Miller family. Marcy, Tiffany, Tisha, and Jennifer, ready for action.
playing against the Stewart family. Stephanie, Angela, Keith, and Terrence. On your marks, let's start the Family Feud. Here's the star of Family Feud, Richard Dawson.
So literally, I walk in the door of Game Show Network, and in 2 minutes, I meet a legend. And basically what I would do was anything and everything they asked, of course. But you would be doing things like logging shows. If they wanted to find an episode or a clip of something that they wanted to play, I would look for that. At one point, Bob had me transcribe an entire 2-hour special that William Shatner hosted. I literally just sat there with the tape and just word for word transcribed everything in the entire episode. And I feel like once it was all done, I said something like, okay, this is great. So now what are you using this for? And I feel like he said, oh, nothing. I just kind of wanted to see if you would actually do it. Like a test of, is this kid committed enough? And I don't know if it was a matter of being committed or needing to be committed, but I just really wanted to make a good impression. So they switched me over from Club AM to the primetime show, Time Games with Peter Tamarkin, who, again, I grew up watching on Press Your Luck, of course, among other shows.
Today, these three players are after big bucks, but they'll have to avoid the whammy as they play the most exciting game of their lives. From Television City in Hollywood, it's time to press your luck. And now, here's your host, the star of Press Your Luck, Peter Tamarkin.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Roddy. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Press Your Luck. We're going to have a lot of fun today in big bucks.
And that's, where I spent basically the rest of my summer until I had to go back to college. It was pretty amazing.
Was that 2-hour block a special called TV's Funniest Game Show Moments? Because I know those are 2 one-hour specials that William Shatner hosted.
That's probably what it was.
Brad fact.
TV's Funniest Game Show Moments. With an incredible array of stars, including Jack Benny. Oh, shut up. Jane Fonda. Bob Barker. Bob Hope. Groucho Marx.
You an old Buick.
Elizabeth Taylor.
Just don't know.
Richard Dawson. Bert Convy. Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis. Gene Raven. Gary Cooper. And to introduce the star of TV's Funniest Game Show Moments, as she did it 20 years ago, Miss Dorothy Kilgallen.
I am the star of the new television series For the People, starting next Sunday night on CBS, Mr. William Shatner.
Thank you. Thank you. 20 years. Where did they go? Thank you very much. Thank you. Good evening. That introduction from Dorothy Kilgallen was my first appearance as a panelist on What's My Line in January of 1965. Can you imagine? I've done many game shows since then, and they're always fun. And that's what this show is about, the fun in games.
Now, I'm curious to know, because GSN has changed over the years. GSN was what hooked me on wanting to become a game show host and being in the game show industry, because after school I would watch the lineup for hours and hours. And to my disappointment, it's not the same as it was back when I was 7 years old. What's your take on Game Show Network now? I'm very curious.
Yeah, they've definitely gone through a lot of shifts in terms of what kind of show they want to do. I have quite a bit of experience with this because I've had the privilege of working on a few shows with them, and they even at one point optioned a show that they were developing an original format. So I got kind of an inside take on this. So I guess they sort of went through a few different phases. In the very, very early years, they were just sort of trying to show old library stuff, like they had the Goodson Todd library. So they mostly just mined that, and then were just only doing these little interstitial cheap things that they could do. And then they gradually got into trying to do shows that they thought were very attention-worthy, so things that would get them press. So they did Who Wants to Be Governor of California as a one-off stunt. This is when they were having the whole recall of Gray Davis, and Schwarzenegger was running. So, of course, they couldn't get Schwarzenegger, but they got Gary Coleman and porn star Mary Carey and all these different things. So they were really going after attention more than they were necessarily like a quality sustaining show. So that didn't work. Then they went through a brief period where they actually were developing primetime light versions of shows, as I would say, things like Russian Roulette, Friend or Foe, which I think was maybe the heyday of their development in terms of actually producing a real quality show, even if it didn't have the same mega jackpot as the networks. It was just a really well thought out game, and it was compelling, and it was somewhat traditional in its format so that the core base could still appreciate it.
Hey there, I'm Kennedy. Welcome to Friend or Foe. Today, I'll be your game show fry cook, and I'm about to slap some questions on the grill. Right now! Backstage, these three players met these potential partners. They were told all the lip-smacking, back-slapping, yet factual information about one another. And based on that, they selected partners. There's no turning back now. The test of knowledge and of trust is about to begin as our new teams try to build their trust funds and ultimately decide whether to share the money as friends or fight over it as foes. Here on Friend or Foe.
And then eventually they brought in Amy Introcaso Davis, who came from the reality space. And the idea was to come up with big kind of crossover event type things like Skin Wars, for example, which was, body painting, so a little bit salacious. And then Hellevator, which was this high concept Halloween themed show of being in a giant warehouse and going through and doing stunts. And I think they realized that they couldn't sort of sustain that financially as a network, being such a small network. And shows like that are not really as repeatable. So they eventually got to where they are now, which is they want to do a lot of very traditional strip shows that they can sort of shoot 5 or 6 in a day and have it be the kind of thing that if you were watching reruns of Family Feud or other things that they have on their network to kind of fill time, it feels sort of like an organic outgrowth of that, just a modern version. So somewhere in there, I was fortunate enough to work on what I think is the best show they've ever done. And I said this even before I worked on it, was Idiotest with Ben Glebe. And it was just such a really smart show with an unfortunately dumb-sounding name. So I think that it never really got the attention that it deserves. But we went 4 seasons with that. The first season just got picked up on Netflix. So we're hoping that maybe somewhere people are discovering it for the first time, and maybe it'll pull a Family Guy and get enough sort of secondary watching that they'll decide to go back and produce more episodes, because that was one of the most fun shows I've worked on.
Hello, I'm Ben Glebe, and your first Idiot Test begins now. Who is definitely getting their ear chewed off? Did you guess the man covering his ears in the background? He may be getting an earful, but he's certainly not getting his ear chewed off. The girl in the front is having her ear of corn chewed by the dog. Weird dog, though. There's chicken all over that table. I'd go for that. Eat your veggies. Idiot Test starts now. Welcome, everybody, to Idiot Test. Tonight, we have roommates Derek and Corey. Woo! And we have friends Lauren and Tara. One of these teams will get to play for $10,000. The other team will be stress-free because they won't have to worry about what to spend all that money on.
I actually really enjoyed Idiotest. That's one of my favorite GSN originals. Russian Roulette is way up there at the top. And Markel Wahlberg, I think, is a fantastic host.
Yeah, he's really good.
4 strangers. One goal, to win a head-to-head competition for the chance at $100,000. One wrong answer could be their last. This is Russian Roulette. From Santa Monica, California, marble and granite specialist Josh Latzer. From Clinton, Mississippi, singer Maria Lay. From Los Angeles, California, elementary school teacher Lalo Quezada. From Napa Valley, California, second grade teacher Elizabeth Bennett. And now, here's our host, Mark L. Wahlberg.
Welcome to Russian Roulette. As you know, correct answers win you money and keep you in the game. However, if you blow it and get the answer wrong, you lose all of your winnings, and you have to play Russian roulette by pulling that little lever you see in front of you there. Each round we start with one drop zone. There it is, but we increase the danger by adding one more zone with each new question. Questions in this round are worth $150. We've given you all that amount to start the game. There it is. Josh, you've been randomly selected to be our first challenger.
All right.
Everybody ready to play?
Yes.
Yeah.
Apollo's ready, huh? All right, let's play the game.
As far as I know, there are only two $100,000 winners at Russian Roulette, but to this day, I still watch those clips because they are two of the most exciting game show wins you'll ever find.
Tick, tack, or toe, what do riders put on their horses?
Tack.
Right, stop the clock, you've done it, $10,000. Good for you. Well done, Maria.
Thank you.
All right. Too bad you had to pass. I think we would have had you with 4 drop zones, but you came back to it. That's important. You got all 10. $10,000 is yours. You now have $12,000, which is yours. However, you have an option that not many people standing on this zone get a chance to do. There are 5 drop zones. There's 1 safe zone, okay? Not a bad gamble, 1 out of 6. If you figure that $12,000 could be $100,000 if you survive, right? The $2,000 is yours to keep. The $10,000 you'd give up. You pull that handle, spins around. If you find the 1 zone that's not red, you walk down that bridge, $100,000 richer. So, Maria, the question is to you. What do you want to do?
I told myself before I even came here today, I came here with nothing. If I leave with nothing, I will have lost nothing. So, I'm going to go for it.
Okay. All right, we're going for $100,000. As of this point, we say goodbye to the $10,000 you've just won. The $2,000 is yours to keep no matter what. We will now close and reset all of the drop zones. And we will cross every finger and toe we have. There is 1 drop zone that wins you money, 5 drop zones that gives you a quick exit. All right? Ready to do this, Maria?
Let's do it.
For $100,000.
I'm crazy.
Let's play Russian roulette. Okay, when you're ready, pull that handle down and let's see what happens. And equally as importantly, you've played Russian roulette and lived to talk about it. Maria, congratulations. We are so happy for you. That's all the time and money we have for today. Join us next time for the ultimate game of chance. Mark Wahlberg saying, until we see you again, watch your step.
Yeah, the end game was great on that. I mean, this is the first show where somebody falls through a floor. It wasn't the last, sadly. I know offhand of 2 others that use the same gimmick. But no, this one made a lot of sense. I mean, even though the overall concept of Russian roulette is pretty dark when you think about it, the drama of just the idea that anytime you're eliminated, this sort of big mechanism is going to rotate, and then if it happens to land on you, that's your doom. I mean, that's at its core a very suspenseful moment.
I know which 2 shows you're thinking of, and it's funny because I remember when Who's Still Standing, which was on NBC, came on, and everyone was so intrigued by the idea that, oh, people would fall through the floor. I'm saying to myself, you do realize that there was a show about 10 years ago that did the exact same thing.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I will always throw my game show knowledge and history in there when I need to.
I was going to say, I would be disappointed if you didn't immediately jump in there. And it's so funny because I like to create my own formats as well, and I've been developing a lot. And it's funny when I walked in a room and I would pitch something and they say, that's sort of already been done. Or, yeah, there's already been a show with suitcases or with letterboards or whatever. And I'm like, they did 2 shows with people falling through a floor, which is a very specific moment. So how do you really justify dismissing something categorically? But they want what they want.
The world of television.
Mm-hmm.
GSN now, I like to sometimes call it the Steve Harvey Family Feud Network because it seems like all they run sometimes is Steve Harvey Family Feud. And speaking of Family Feud, your first writing job was on Louis Anderson Family Feud, which is what started this syndicated run of Family Feud back in 1999.
Today on Family Feud, from Los Angeles, California, they're so pumped up to be here, they spent all last week at the gym. Meet the Kim family! From Riverside, California, they're the rowdiest bunch I've ever met. They're the Carvetta family! You're about to see these 2 teams battle it out for $10,000 in cash, because it's time to play the Family Feud! Now here's the star of our show, Louis Anderson!
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
The Louis Anderson run was very interesting in terms of the gameplay because it basically disregarded a lot of what people knew of Family Feud in that the 4th and final round was worth triple while the others were worth single, and there was only 1 strike in the final round. And to win, you didn't have to get 300 points. You just had the most points at the end of the 4th round. So when you first heard of these changes they were making to the show, what were your initial thoughts?
This is very early on in my professional career. So first of all, I was just so starstruck to believe that I was working on a version of a show that I grew up watching. For me, I was just like, whatever I can do. You want me to mop floors? I'll mop floors. But the explanation that was given to me was that they said, hey, we're now in an era where there used to be like 24 minutes of programming in a half hour and 6 minutes of commercial. And we've now gotten to the point where I think then it was 21 and a half minutes of program and 8.5 minutes of commercial. And since then, it just erodes even more. And because of that, whenever you try to revive a classic format, you have to be mindful of picking up those 2.5 minutes somewhere. And you can only sort of trim this contestant and celebrity interviews so much. For celebrity shows like Pyramid, they're on to promote something, so you've got to keep that in. And then the question is, okay, so if you don't trim it from there, where are you going to trim it from? And unfortunately, sometimes it becomes the game. So whereas the Dawson version, and even the current version has figured out a way to do it, but where there's a more gradual escalation from single to double, and then if necessary, they go to a triple round. The concern at that time, bringing back the show, was we have to have a very strictly formatted show where every one of the 4 acts is a prescribed round. So it's going to be single, 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 and then triple at the end of it, and then you have the fast money. And somehow we felt that was the way to get in under time. And the unfortunate thing, I remember one of my jobs on that show was to track how often the Q4 winner ended up winning the game. And I think in something like the first 3 seasons, I think only 4 times did the team that won the 4th question not win the game. So to your point, I mean, it's like, why were you even playing the first 3 games if there's not even money at stake? The trick with all of this, and this is true of all game shows, is you have to think about the fact that you can't create a format where one team could have an insurmountable lead before the game is over, because then there truly is nothing to play for.
Right.
So there needs to be some kind of a device that allows the trailing team to catch up. And we always look at the worst case scenario, which is how much could one team be ahead and the other team be trailing and yet still have mathematically a chance to come back, even if it's minute. So the best formats, I think, are ones where the big comeback is something that is so difficult to do that if they actually pull it off, you feel like, wow, they've kind of earned that. And it's tricky with Family Feud because it's not like you can ask a really hard trivia question and then they'll have to come up with the answer. You still have to ask a survey question that 100 people had to answer a certain way. And if the majority of people knew that, then chances are that so will the contestants. So Family Feud is uniquely challenging in that way. There's been other shows where I think win, lose, or draw, if I'm remembering correctly, you could be down by 8 or 9 questions, but there's a timed round. So in theory, if you just happen to get a ton right in that time, you could catch all the way up to the team that's leading by 8 or 9 answers. And then there's shows like Hollywood Squares that have sort of an unseen clock, and then the horn would go off, and then you'd realize, okay, I guess the game's over now.
The word smog comes from what 2 words?
Smoke and fog.
Smoke and fog. I'm going to agree. Smoke and fog!
Jeopardy has the same thing with the do-do-do-do, that comes in, but you don't know that you're that far behind. So that's their way of masking the fact that one contestant has an insurmountable lead, because you as a viewer don't realize how little time there is and how unrealistic it is for somebody to come back.
And with that, we wrap up the Jeopardy round.
These are all things that, as a producer, you think about when you develop a format and you want something that feels fair but also satisfying to the viewer. Honestly, it's one of the hardest things. I actually had a conversation 2 months ago with a producer who literally was like, we're developing this new show and we can't figure out how they can catch up. I actually sent an email. I said, well, in my experience, these are the different ways you could create a catch-up mechanism. There's the go-tos. There's the timed round. There's the escalating points. There's the hidden clock. But there has to always be some way, in theory, that one team could catch up, even if the odds are that they won't. And I think from a viewing standpoint, most people would be okay with the idea of like a Family Feud where if some team is leading 299 to nothing, I think they'd be okay with like 99 times out of 100, the 299 team will win, so long as there's at least mathematically a chance that the other team could come back to justify why they continue playing the game.
It's not that easy. A lot of people think game shows are easy to come up with and to produce. It's not that easy sometimes.
I actually love that stuff. That's where I really become like a format geek, I say, because I love looking at a show and basically trying to break it, essentially, before it goes on air. I love looking at all worst-case scenarios. Many times now, I'm asked to write the show Bible, which is all the rules and the what-ifs. Let's say this were to happen, or what if someone challenges a question? How do we proceed? And it's really not until you write a show Bible that you start to go, oh, I never thought about this. Couldn't somebody technically, oh, this is very unlikely, but what if, blah, blah, blah. And you have to be prepared for every scenario, because if, God forbid, it happens on stage in the moment, and you've got lawyers there, and you've got an audience there, and contestants wondering how you're going to handle it. And in fact, actually, and we're going to go really deep down the rabbit hole, you and I both saw what I consider to be the one format flaw of Pyramid, which came up in season 3, which is what happens in the main game if one team, after 4 subjects are played, if one team has an insurmountable lead, but the Mystery 7 is still on the board. How do you play it? And we had a long discussion about this when we were coming up with the show Bible, because you could really make an argument either way. You could say, well, okay, this team is leading 14-3, and the most that the trailing team could score is 7, and that's not enough to catch up. So let's just end the game, and so be it. The Mystery 7 doesn't get played. Well, is that fair then to the leading team, who is doing so great that they don't even get a shot at playing for this big prize, this trip? So then you could say, all right, well, maybe then you just keep playing. But then the question is, okay, if you continue by normal rules, you would start with the trailing team getting the pick of the final 2 subjects. So what happens if they go and they pick a subject and it isn't the Mystery 7? Well, there's no reason to play that game, so it's a complete dead round. So now what do? Do you tell them, okay, sorry, that wasn't the Mystery 7, you don't get to play, let's go to the leading team? And we went around and around, and where we ultimately landed, and this is the subject of a lot of debate, I know, on message boards and stuff, is we said, okay, the team that's leading 14-3 in this case, what we'll do for them is we're going to reveal the Mystery 7, which we never do. It's the only instance in which we actually unveil the mystery, and we will give the leading team the chance to play for that prize. And the reason being is the game is already over. The determination of who's going to go to the winner's circle has already been decided, and that's the most important thing as far as viewers are concerned. So this is really just a bonus on top. So our thought was, let's rush to the ending as quickly as we can. Let's give the team that did so well the chance to actually play for that prize, because the trailing team has already been eliminated. There's no reason why they should keep playing at all. But again, this was one of those, it was up for debate, because they would say, that's not fair. Why not at least give the trailing team a chance to maybe win a trip or whatever? And our feeling was, you lost the game, your game's over. This is just something the producers are doing as a nice gesture for the winning team to potentially pad their coffers, if you will.
You got the 2 perfect rounds. You have 14 points to 6 points for Sarah and Carol. And Sarah and Carol, since you're trailing by more than 7 points, Unfortunately, there's no way for you to win, and the game is over.
Oh, my.
First time we've ever had this happen.
Oh, my God. Wait a minute. Sarah, you're the biggest loser they've ever had.
But Aaron and Nick, you do win. You will be going to the winner's circle, where you're going to play for $100,000. But another little twist, since the Mystery 7 is still up there somewhere, we're going to give you a chance to play for that trip.
Yes.
Okay? So let's find out where that Mystery 7 is. Give me 5.
I was going to choose that last time.
I cannot tell you what all these things have in common, but Nick, if you can get all 7 right in those 30 seconds, you're going to win an incredible trip to Antigua.
Okay.
See if you can knock it out. Ready? Go.
Okay, not breakfast or dinner, but
Lunch.
February, March.
April.
White, red, black are all
Colors.
Blank and Juliet, Shakespeare. Blank
Romeo.
and Juliet. Men are from Mars, women are from
Venus.
Dallas is in what state?
Dallas is in Texas.
If I'm talking to you and I'm trying to get with you.
You're doing it.
They did it!
For purists, the other sticking point I know a lot of people have about the current version of Pyramid is that there's no tiebreaker game. It used to be that you would pick words that start with R or words that start with J and then play it out. But the reality is we didn't have time for one of those, much less potentially 2 of those, which could happen in the first and third rounds of the half hour. So we felt we had to come up with a solution that, as fairly as we could, basically ended the game as quickly as possible so that we could save the bulk of the show content for what people really want to see, which is that exciting winner's circle.
Ever since season 1, when I saw that change in the tiebreaker, I've been trying to think of different short ways to do tiebreakers. I kind of came up with one, but of course, me being the person that wants to find the best way to do it, I haven't cracked that code just yet, but I'm still thinking.
Yeah, if you come up with it, I mean, I know that the producers are aware that it's not the most perfect or most satisfying way to break a tie, but we've tried a couple things internally and kind of kicked around some ideas, but I know that if somebody came up with a great alternate solution, that they're definitely open to testing it out, and if it works, potentially implementing it. So you can be that hero, man. You can be the guy.
I could be the pyramid hero. This is life-changing opportunity. I'm going to keep thinking.
You should.
Now, speaking of Pyramid, I know you worked on not only the ABC version, but you worked on the syndicated version back in 2002, the Donny Osmond version of Pyramid. I think this is a cool story that our listeners would want to hear. Talk about the time that you got to play a practice round with Dick Clarke.
Oh, man. Yeah, I'm not much of a collector. I know a lot of game show fans love to sort of get the old home games and props and things from the shows, and I don't do a ton of that, but the one prize item that I have it's a videotape of Dick Clarke and me playing Pyramid. So what happened was Donny Osmond was the host, and he was friends with Dick Clarke, and the revival happened with Dick's blessing, and so much so that when we were doing specialty weeks, we brought on Dick Clarke to play against Betty White, which from a game show geek standpoint is just like heaven for us. And so Dick came on the show, and I was one of the writers on the show, and what they did at that time was they paired each writer with a celebrity, and the morning that the celebrity arrived, the writer would go to their dressing room and play some warm-up sample games and go through all the rules. And then as soon as they felt like they were kind of up to speed, we would bring them down to the set. And before we loaded in the audience, we would play some practice rounds with them on stage so that they could just get a feel for where the clues were going to pop up and what it's like to sit in the winner's circle and not use your hands and all that stuff. So when I heard that we booked Dick Clarke, it was all I could do to like not slip something in the drink of all the other writers to make sure that they were not available to prep him. I said, Dick Clarke's coming. We're going to have this conversation. I'm going to sit with Dick Clarke and get him ready to play Pyramid. And to Dick's credit, I remember I walked into the dressing room and I said, Mr. Clarke, it's such an honor to have you here. I said, normally this is the part where I explain how the game is played, but I'm happy to sit here and have you explain it back to me if you want. And he laughed and he said, you know what, it's been so many years. He goes, why don't you go through your whole briefing? I'm sure I could use it. And like a schmuck, I sat there and told Dick Clarke how to play Pyramid. And then at the end of that all, we came down on stage and I had told the control room, I said, please, I don't ask for much. Just roll on 2 different decks to make sure that I get a copy of this. And so, of course, we play the game, and I end up giving one of the worst clues ever, and Dick Clarke ends up calling me out on it on camera and asked, where did you go to college and all that kind of, but it was great. But I got taped of me playing Pyramid with Dick Clarke, and I don't know who else can say that.
Not many people, that's for sure. I know Dick Clarke was a celebrity guest on the $25,000 Pyramid, which was the nighttime version of the show hosted by Bill Cullen in the 70s. So I guess that's one of the other rare scenarios when somebody could say that they have played Pyramid with Dick Clarke. Brad fact.
Good luck to both of you for $25,000. Here comes your first subject. Go.
Raymond Graham Swing, John Cameron Swayze,
Newscasters.
Chet Huntley. An oil well.
Things that are flat. Things that...
A record.
Things that are round. Things that go round. Things that,
We'll go on to the next, please. Next.
Oh.
Butterfield 7 or 8, whatever it was.
Oh, Elizabeth Taylor movie.
Peppard, Washington.
George. People named George.
Right. A record.
A record goes around. Has grooves on it.
A golf course. A putting green.
Putting green. Things that are green. Things that are...
A donut.
Things that have a hole in the center. Whoa.
Yeah, so someone out there might have that too. But it was just great because you've got someone like him who not only hosted Pyramid, but of course is an icon in TV, both as on camera and behind the camera. So it was a great experience. It's really one I'm so glad that I had, and so glad that I have captured and digitized and backed up.
Now, the biggest question I've always had with regards to the Donny Osmond Pyramid is, why did a contestant play for $10,000 again and not the full $25,000 if they made it to the winner's circle for a second time in one show but failed to win the $10,000 on the first try?
You know, it's been so long ago, I don't even remember that was the case. I can't honestly give you an answer for that. My guess would be that because it was a syndicated show and this was at a time when game shows were not really super hot and pushed very heavily, that we were just looking for the most cost-effective way to budget a show. And they figured if you could just play for $10,000 and that was enough, and it was really about the drama of it, it wouldn't really make that much of a difference from a rating standpoint, how much money was being played for it. That's just speculation, but I honestly don't remember well enough to be able to tell you for sure.
That was always a question about the Donny Osmond Pyramid that I could never find an answer for, because on the original $100,000 Pyramid, even if you won or lost in the winner's circle during the $10,000 try, if you made it back for a second time on the same episode, you played for $25,000, because technically it wasn't $35,000 the contestant was winning, but rather $10,000 of the full $25,000 for one win and all $25,000 for a second win. But on the Donny Osmond version, you actually needed to win both winner's circle attempts to win the $25,000. Brad fact.
That actually gets to the discussion we had for the $100,000 Pyramid, the current ABC version, which some people said, well, if the first time you go it's 50 and the second time it's 100, shouldn't it be the $150,000 Pyramid? And the short answer is that's one way to look at it. But what I found is that people don't want to have to think and do math when they are playing a game. They really want to just sort of have big, nice, round numbers that make sense. And, when we said, okay, it's the $100,000 Pyramid and that's what was advertised and we knew that that was the amount, we didn't want to do a thing where it's like the first time you play it's $25,000 and then it's $75,000, because that felt like, are we really going to make a winner's circle that's going to be 3 times harder or feel like it's worth that much more money? And then any sort of denomination in the middle would be $35,000, $65,000, just like weird numbers. So we said, look, if cost isn't an issue, why don't we just say the first time you go, you play for 50, and the next time you play for 100, and that is your $100,000 pyramid. So that round is the $100,000 pyramid. And that's what we went with. Unfortunately, ABC had deep enough pockets that they were willing to be generous. And, I think nobody seems to mind that people are winning huge amounts of money on that show. And it's great when they do.
And also what I love about how you could win $100,000 in one go is this was the first time in the history of any incarnation of a $100,000 pyramid that you could actually win $100,000 as a first-time player. You didn't have to go through a tournament and win your way to win $100,000. This was the first time where on one show, you're a first-time player. If you win that winner's circle and you make it to the top, that's $100,000. Brad fact.
Yeah, and I mean, it's great that ABC was able to embrace that. I think in many ways, ABC kind of made the bed that set the table for that, which was Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? You know, as soon as there was $1 million game show that people actually won, you know, now suddenly $100,000 needs to not be this like weird, elusive, huge value that you have to have an impossibly difficult pyramid to prevent people from winning. You got to make it something that happens not all the time, but with some amount of frequency that anytime you watch, you think this could really happen. So 100,000 versus $1 million, I would hope that at least a couple times a season we give that away. And so far we have. It was real hard to do the first season, but I think people get better. We also got certain celebrities would come back that we knew could play the game well. And we also just got, you know, more and more stringent, I think, on casting and making sure that the people that played the game as contestants weren't just pretty faces with great stories, but really, truly could play the winner's circle in particular at a high level. And it's great when you see somebody come up with just the perfect clue for the top. The example that comes to mind was the top category was things in a bunch. And, you know, if you say grapes, bananas, as a guesser, that's just going to put you on fruit and to try to think about the fact that they're grouped in a bunch. But the contestant said the Brady's, which was just a genius clue because that's part of the title. It's like, what else do you think of when you hear the Brady's? It's just such a great money clue. And then when that happens, it's like, that guy deserves the money. It's great when you watch a really masterful pyramid player play and you can just see the wheels turning, and those next level players are so rare to come by, but when you see them and they manage to do it in the clutch in their one moment with all the lights shining on them for all the money, nothing beats that.
Like us, the true players.
Yeah, well, I wish I could have played Pyramid as a contestant. I think that's maybe one regret. Not that I'm going to complain, but, you know, I love playing that game. It's probably my favorite one to actually play. So I missed out on doing it for the 100,000, but I'm very fortunate to be such a big part of two versions of its revival.
One day we'll team up and we'll play Pyramid, all right?
Let's do it. Would love to.
Before we get to the game, I want to talk briefly about what you do now. So you work on confetti, and for the listeners who have no clue what confetti is, why don't you explain the concept of the game, because it's really cool.
Yeah, confetti. So that's, as I explained to other people, if you've played HQ, it's sort of like Facebook's version of that. Instead of 12 questions, there's 13 questions. And the idea was to take the show away from being just a person in front of a green screen and actually have a real studio. So we've had special guests come on, like circus performers and stunt people, and they do acts, and then we'll do questions based on their acts, and some co-hosts, things like that. So, yeah, it's been an interesting shift because it's a daily show. It's Monday through Friday, 6:30 Pacific, 9:30 Eastern. And, yeah, it's just a very different day-to-day experience as a producer because every single day you're going live that night with a show, come hell or high water. So you're constantly rehearsing that day's show, but also looking ahead at future shows and gauging how well people do, and are the games too easy, are the games not easy enough, and then we can adjust from day to day, which is a nice benefit of a live show.
Did you ever imagine that Facebook game shows would become so popular? And do you think this is the next wave of the game show craze, Facebook game shows or interactive game shows on phones?
I kind of am still waiting to see like a truly breakout game that is designed for and benefiting from the immediacy of interactivity. To me, the jury's really still out. I feel like HQ as a business model went through an interesting journey because they were sort of the victim of their own success, which is, okay, so you've got this jackpot, let's say it's $10,000, and if you've got 1,000 people playing and at the end there's only 10 people left and they split 10 grand, they each get $1,000. Great, that's exciting. Now, what happens when you get 100,000 people playing, or 1 million people playing, or 3 million people playing, which they had at one point, but your jackpot still remains in the same area? Suddenly, you make it all the way to the end, you answer these impossibly difficult questions, and then you're told that your share of the pot is 26 cents. And it's a turnoff to players who are in it for the financial payment. So I'm very intrigued by the territory that's being explored and the fact that companies are willing to do live shows and put up money on a daily basis. But I still think the perfect format has not quite been cracked yet. Confetti, in many ways, we're in a great spot from a player standpoint, which is we're doing just well enough in terms of viewership that the show is continuing, but it's not like in the stratosphere of number of players. We're not getting millions of players. So at the end of last year, we actually had one night when 5 people each won $5,000 because of the $25,000 jackpot. So if that's still a possibility, then there's a real incentive as a player to participate. But in terms of the longevity of it, I'm intrigued by trying to figure out a format where somehow we can still have that many people play and the payout consistently will be worth people's time if they manage to go the distance.
All right, so now I have 2 things I have to work on. I have to work on figuring out the perfect pyramid tiebreaker and now figuring out a good format for Facebook.
There you go, man. You got New Year's resolutions already set out for you.
That's right. Those are my New Year's resolutions. I haven't made them yet, but now I've made my resolutions.
Yeah, listen, if you can do either one of those, man, I think you'll have a lot of people very grateful to you.
Well, speaking of games, it's my favorite time of the game show because I get to create a game for a true game show professional to play. It is time for the game of the day.
Game of the day.
Now, I told you before that this game is going to be one that you actually worked on, and I gave a hint before, and I'll give you another hint. You mentioned a celebrity before that you had to transcribe a show from, and he was the host of this show.
Oh, my God. Are we really playing Show Me the Money?
Yes, we are. It's time to bring back Show Me the Money. Show Me the Money.
Wow, that takes me back.
Tonight, the legendary William Shatner is bringing variety to game.
It's true, I'm bringing sexy back.
With 13 beautiful dancers.
One of these girls is holding $250,000.
If you've got the right answers.
I'm locking in with YMCA.
And pick the right dancers.
I'm feeling pretty good about this one.
You could take home over $1 million.
Yes!
Yeah, baby! And change your life forever.
Wow.
The fun starts right now on
Hey!
Show Me the Money! Let's give it up for the one, the only, William Shatner!
Yes, indeed. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you. Please. If giving away big money is wrong, then America, I don't want to be right. This is Show Me the Money, the game show where you can bank a ridiculous amount of cash, and I'm talking more than $1 million, for a few correct answers. But holding on to it could be the fight of your life.
Before we actually get to the game, I was curious to know, now you worked as a co-head writer on Show Me the Money, right?
Yeah, I was a co-head writer, and that was the show I ended up getting my first producer credit. It went through a very long and torturous development process to get to the show that ultimately went on the air, but there was a point at which we just had major issues with the format, and it just wasn't working out the way we wanted, and so they knew that I was a little bit of a game show geek, and so they were like, hey, do you mind if we pull you out of the writer's room for maybe a week so that we can help kind of crack the format? And I ended up never going back to the writer's room, and that was my first producing job.
Show Me the Money was an interesting show, to say the least. While it was obviously trying to copycat Deal or No Deal, which was the biggest show on the air at that time in 2006, I actually thought the questioning format of Show Me the Money wasn't that bad because it was unique having the contestants see the opening statement and then have them select one of the questions that would complete that statement. I actually think if the questioning format wasn't overshadowed by way too much production value, it could work again for another show.
Well, I'm glad you liked it because the writers hated it.
Really?
Yeah, well, we liked it from a creative standpoint.
Right.
But yeah, oddly enough, this takes me back. So at the time when we were head writing these, we had a whole formula for how we ranked the difficulty level of questions. And based on where someone was on their ascent to $1 million, they would draw from a different level of question pool. So if I'm remembering correctly, we had 5 different levels of difficulty based on where you were from 0 to $1 million or $1.5 million, I think might have been our cap. And for each one of those levels, we had to have what we call triplets. So each one would start with the same word or phrase. So there was an enormous amount of material that got written for a single game. And basically, if I'm remembering correctly, the most questions that could ever get answered in a single game was 11, I think, because you had to get 6 correct before you got 6 wrong or vice versa. So if you worked a full count, so to speak, 5 and 5, then the next question was going to either win it or lose it for you. So 11 questions. But to do that, we stacked something like 115 questions. And it was like a choose-your-own-adventure novel of like any possible way the game could go and difficulty levels. So there was so much unused material, and we had to have all of it written and all of it researched and all of it approved by the network. So there were a lot of really late nights and a lot of energy drinks consumed for that show.
Well, for this version, I didn't write 115 questions. I only wrote
Good.
21.
I'm glad. Again, you're figuring out smarter ways to do shows.
I've modernized the format a bit. So here's how this version is going to work. You'll be answering a total of 7 questions. And for each question, I'll give you the beginning statement, and then you'll have to choose one of the 3 ways to complete that question, A, B, or C. Now, as you know, if you're unsure of the answer to your first choice, you can pass and pick again. And you may pass if you don't know the answer to your second choice as well. However, if you end up passing twice, you'll be forced to answer whichever completed question is remaining. Once you give your answer, you'll then choose one of the 13 cards that contain a point value between 20,000 points and 250,000 points. And before the show, I shuffled them up, so I don't even know what is under what card. So
I'll take your word for it.
I play legit. I don't want to get the lawyers involved.
I trust you, man.
Now, if you get the question correct, those points will be added to your score. However, for this version, an incorrect answer doesn't mean you will lose any points. You just won't gain the points you could have earned with the correct answer to that question. So no penalty for a wrong answer.
Got it.
After the 7th question, if you've amassed a total of 500,000 points or more, you will be deemed a winner. And all the questions are game show related.
Fantastic.
One thing did stay put in this version, the killer card.
Uh-oh.
Now, if you pick the killer card, your game could end right then and there, but hopefully you won't pick it. I'll explain it if it does come up.
Sounds good.
Those are all the rules. Aaron, you ready to play?
Let's do it.
Let's play Show Me the Money. And remember, you need at least 500,000 points by the end of question 7 to win. And here comes your first statement. Question 1. Which Family Feud host, A, B, or C?
Oh, let's go right in the middle with B.
B. Which Family Feud host was born in Hamilton, Ohio? Now, of course, if you don't know, you can pass. You still have 2 other options.
I know Louis was born in Minnesota, and beyond that, Richard Dawson was born in England. I don't feel confident enough in this to answer, so I'll pass that, and I'll take another question there.
All right, you're going to pass. If you had a guess, what would you have said?
I'm going to go Richard Karn.
It was actually Ray Combs. But no worries, A or C?
He rest in peace, yes.
Indeed. A or C?
Let's go with A.
A. Which Family Feud host was also the host of a reality competition show called Secret Talents of the Stars, which was canceled after only 1 episode?
Secret Talents of the Stars. Wow, you're coming out hard out of the gate here. It doesn't sound like a Louis thing. I don't think Richard would have signed on for that. I don't think you would make Ray the answer to multiple questions. I mean, John O'Hurley's another possibility. I'm between O'Hurley and Steve Harvey, but given the fact that Steve now hosts variety shows, that might have been more up his alley. So I'm going to go with Steve Harvey.
Are you locking in Steve Harvey?
I'm going to lock that in.
Steve Harvey is now locked in. All right, time to pick one of the 13 cards. Which one would you like?
Let's go with number 2.
Number 2. All right, now this game is called Show Me the Money, but since we're playing for points, why don't you say, show me the points?
Show me the points.
220,000 points.
Oh, boy.
You said Steve Harvey. Now let's see if you are right or if you're wrong. It wasn't Steve Harvey. Unfortunately, it was John O'Hurley.
It was O'Hurley. At least I had it narrowed down. Not that that does me much good.
But that's all right. This was only question 1. You still got plenty more questions and a lot more points to get. So we're going to go on to question number 2. The model. M-O-D-E-L. The model. A, B, or C?
Oh, let's try C this time.
C. The model of The Price is Right, who modeled on the show for 28 years, the longest of any Price is Right model, is who?
Well, see, Diane was the one that had the scandal and left. Price is Right is the kind of show that there's so many people that are so rabidly fanatic about it that if I get this wrong, I'll never hear the end of it. But I'm going to give a shot. I'm going to say Holly Hallstrom.
All right, you're going to go Holly Hallstrom. You're locking that in?
Sure.
All right, now pick a number.
Let's go with 12.
Number 12. Aaron, say it loud and proud.
Show me the points.
Uh-oh. The killer card.
Oh, no.
Well, now, here's the thing, though. If you got the answer right, then the game continues. You just don't get any points for that round. If not, you'll have to face the killer question. You said Holly Hallstrom. Now let's see if you are right or if you are wrong. Ooh, Aaron, I'm so sorry. That is incorrect. Janice Pennington was the right answer.
It's Janice.
1972 to 2000. But the game is not over. You still have to face the killer question, but the game is not over just because you got that wrong.
No, but my reputation as a game show guy is, so...
Well, let's redeem it, all right? So you have to get this right.
All right.
In order to stay in the game.
Okay, we can do this.
This is the killer question. The game show He Said, She Said was revived under what name? A game show that would run from 1974 to 1978, and again from 1982 to 1984.
Can I pick a different game? Well, we've learned one thing, which is that you know your game shows more than I do. He Said, She Said. Give me the years again, if you would. 1974
to 1978, and again from 1982 to 1984.
All right, so it's not Newlywed Game, because that one had a longer run. And it's not All These Three's a Crown, because that had a different period. Oh, boy. He Said, She Said. Oh, is it Tattletales?
It is Tattletales. You got it.
Hey.
He Said, She Said was hosted by Joe Garagiola and ran from September 15th, 1969 to August 21st, 1970.
This is TV and movie star Alejandro Rey and his wife, Joyce. This is the father of a new generation of mystery stories, Mickey Spillane and his wife, actress Sherry Spillane. This is funny man Morty Gunty and his wife, Marilyn. This is Jack Parr's favorite funny man, Jack Douglas, and his wife, Reiko. These four celebrity couples are here to play He Said, She Said. And now, here he is. Here comes your host, Joe Garagiola.
You have saved yourself. Okay, so you have 5 questions left.
All
You
right.
need 500,000 points, but remember, there's still the 250,000. There's still a 200,000, so plenty of opportunities. Next question. Who? WHO. Who? That's the start. A, B, or C?
Let's go B.
B. Who was the first person to receive the Daytime Emmy Award for Outstanding Game Show Host?
Let's go Richard Dawson.
You gonna lock that in? I mean, you could always pick again if you want.
Yeah, I feel like I should know enough about the history of which year the Daytime Emmy for Game Show Host was created. Because it could be Dick Clark, but that's the thing, his Pyramid was on earlier. I'm going to change my answer to Dick Clark.
So you're going to say Dick Clark. You don't want to pick again. You're going to say Dick Clark.
No, you know what? Let's go for it. Let's go Dick Clark.
All right, you're locking in Dick Clark. Pick a number.
7, right in the middle.
Number 7. You know what to say, Aaron.
Show me the points.
180,000 points. Not too shabby.
Okay.
You said Dick Clark. It was in 1974. Are you right or are you wrong? I'm sorry to say, Aaron, you're wrong again. The answer was Peter Marshall for Hollywood Squares.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that stands to reason.
Still, no worries. You still got 4 questions, and there's still a lot of points out there. Next question, question number 4. Who wants to be a millionaire? A, B, or C?
Let's go A.
Going with A, all right. Who Wants to Be a Millionaire has had how many hosts during its syndicated run from 2002 to the present?
All right, I should be able to do this. So it started with Meredith Vieira, and there's been Terry Crews, there's been Cedric the Entertainer, there's been Chris Harrison, who's the current host, and I think that's it, because Regis didn't do syndicated. I'm just trying to scour my brain to think if there's anybody who did a season that I'm not thinking of. I'm pretty sure it's 4. I'm going to lock that in.
All right, pick a number.
Let's go with 4.
Number 4 for 4. Sounds logical to me. All right, Aaron, say the magic words.
Show me the points.
40,000. That's all right, 40,000.
A lot of fours.
You said Who Wants to Be a Millionaire has had 4 hosts during its syndicated run. Now let's find out if you're right or if you are wrong. That is the correct answer. You got it.
All right. Finally.
Yeah, you're right. Meredith Vieira from 2002 to 2013. Cedric the Entertainer, 2013 to 2014. Terry Crews from 2014 to 2015. And, of course, Chris Harrison from 2015 to the present. 40,000 points. Here comes your next statement. 3 questions left. Alex Trebek, A, B, or C?
C.
C. Alex Trebek hosted The Wizard of Oz, his first American game show, which had a theme song composed and sung by what famous actor, songwriter, and game show host?
Alan Thicke. How much money am I going to win? Number 6.
You seem very confident with that one. And
oh, yeah.
Number 6 is... You're going to be very happy. 120,000 points.
All right.
Just for formality reasons, let me say, are you right or are you wrong? Of course you're right, Aaron.
Who's the man with the money, makes a dark day sunny? Who's the fella every day, gives a bundle away? Who's the guy with the prizes that'll light up your eyes? It's never ending, get a friend and get ready to play. Hey, 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 hey. It's the Wizard of Oz. Wizard of Oz. The odds are that you'll be a winner today with the Wizard of Oz. Wizard of Oz. Yeah, the wizard is here, make you feel okay. Hey, 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 hey. It's the Wizard of Oz. Wizard of Oz. The odds are that you'll be a winner today with the Wizard of Oz. Wizard of Oz. The wizard is here, make you feel okay. Hey, 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 hey.
You're up to 160,000 right now with 2 questions left. Now, in order to stay in the game, you have to get this question right. Question 6 starts with The Big. A, B, or C?
Okay, let's go B. B for big.
B it is. The Big Deal, won during the 1963 pilot of Let's Make a Deal, was behind what numbered door?
I thought you were going to say The Big Deal, which wasn't that the Mark DiCarlo version
Yes.
of Let's Make a Deal?
Yes, it was.
Came on? I was also waiting for a big showdown question. That didn't happen. Okay, so The Big Deal.
Well, you could
behind
pass.
which...
Remember, you could pass.
Yeah, let's pass. If you eliminated one of them and then told me to pick and I could switch, then that would be the Monty Hall problem, so I would have switched. But anyway, yes, we're not going to answer that.
It was door number 3.
Now, Joyce, you know behind one of the 2 remaining doors is $2,000 worth, and you chose door number 3, didn't you?
Yeah.
Are you ready to take a look and see what's behind there?
Of course.
Of course. All right. For $75, Joyce Hill bought door number 3, and let's see what's behind that door. There it is. It's a beautiful Westinghouse electric kitchen, and it's all yours. All these modern appliances for your own home. The Westinghouse air conditioner, electric range, automatic dishwasher, laundromat, washer and dryer, the new matching Westinghouse refrigerator and freezer. This Westinghouse electric kitchen is worth $2,005, Joyce Hill.
Door number 3. Yeah, I would have said 2 and I would have been wrong. So, okay, let's go with A.
A. Well, you were hoping for one. The Big Showdown.
There it is.
Was an ABC game show that ran from December 23rd, 1974 to July 4th, 1975. Who was the host of The Big Showdown?
That would be Jim Peck.
All right, you say Jim Peck. You're locking that in?
I am.
All right, pick a number.
8.
Number 8. And you know what to say, Aaron.
Show me the points.
200,000 points.
Oh, yeah.
This is literally big. Your answer is Jim Peck for 200,000 points. Let's see if you are right or if you are wrong. You got it!
Yeah. The reason I know that, I'm not that old to have watched it in its original incarnation, but I've seen the video of him falling down the stairs. I don't know if you've seen that YouTube clip.
The big fall down.
Welcome to the Big Showdown. And here's your host, Jim Peck.
You people would applaud a lynching. We have one fast chorus of Amazing Grace. And welcome to the Big Showdown. And that was the Big Showdown, as a matter of fact.
The big fall down, that's right. So that's what's stuck in my head. So thank you, Jim Peck, for your clumsiness. That has saved me in this game.
You have 360,000 points. You have one question left. Now, keep in mind, not only do you have to get this question correct, but you also have to pick a point card of at least 140,000 points. Question 7 starts as follows. Celebrity. A, B, or C?
Celebrity, let's go with A.
Celebrity Sweepstakes was a game show hosted by Jim McCrell that aired on what network from April 1st, 1974 to October 1st, 1976?
Oh, man. I want to say it was ABC. I just can't say for certain that that's true. So I'm going to pass.
All right. Good thing you did pass. It was NBC. And now you have a choice between B or C.
All right, let's go with B.
Celebrity partners were added to the gameplay of what game show on November 5th, 1979 that featured the terms block, charge, and long shot?
That would be one of my game show developer idols. Jay Wolpert created the show. Whew.
That's your answer. Pick a card. Come on.
Yes.
You have to get a big one.
I'm going to hope it's lucky for me. Let's go 13.
Using your confetti powers. You need lucky number 13 to be worth at least 140,000 points. For the final time, Aaron, go ahead and say it.
Show me the points.
I don't believe it. 140,000 points. You got it.
Really?
I'm dead serious.
Hey, Bradley, show me the money.
Well, I hope you'll be dancing with those $1 million dancers tonight. Is the correct answer. You have just won the game of Show Me the Money.
Oh, my gosh. Most amazing comeback ever. And I'm sure I'll still get crap about it from my game show friends. It was a little rough at first, but I hope I redeemed myself in the eyes of some people.
Well, you know, a lot of contestants start off on the lower end of points or money total, and then they end up winning.
You know what? This brings our entire podcast full circle, because weren't we just talking about you always have to have a way to come back?
You are absolutely right. And once again, the game show has managed to come full circle. Well, Aaron, thank you so much for traveling back to 2006 with me and playing Show Me the Money. Show me the money. Well, Aaron, thank you so much for taking the time to join me on this episode of the game show. And on a personal note, thank you so much for all the wonderful conversations that we had while working on the $100,000 pyramid, and for sharing your insight and knowledge of the game show industry with me. I had so much fun talking with you both then and now.
The feeling's mutual, man. It's a pleasure, and I used to say it's nice to meet somebody who has the same game show knowledge. Now I can say it's nice to meet someone with greater game show knowledge than me.
These were only a few questions. I'm sure you know a lot more stuff than I do in other areas.
It's all good, man. It's all for the love of the game.
That's right. And one more time, tell the listeners the name of your game and where they can find it.
Yeah, so my board game is called That Was Awkward. You can find it on Amazon, and you can go to endlessgames.com. They've got it there as well. And they actually just put it into Kohl's last year as well. So a lot of people that I know have been randomly shopping in Kohl's and stumbled upon it and said, hey, that's your game. So any of those places should work for you.
And I know we've only scratched the surface when it comes to your game show career. And, you know, I still have more curiosities and questions that I would love to ask you. It just so happens we ran out of time. But I hope in the near future you can come back onto the show and we'll talk some more. We'll play another game.
I look forward to it, man. It was a lot of fun. Thank you for having me.
Well, my pleasure. So you heard it right here. The game show career of Aaron Solomon Part 2, coming soon to a radio near you. Well, Aaron, thank you again so much for joining me on the game show, and I look forward to having you back on again soon. And all the best with That Was Awkward.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks so much. Really, this is a pleasure. It was a lot of fun to do.
And I'll get right on those resolutions.
Yeah, you should do it, man. I'm serious. That's how you get in.
That's right. You know it. My scratch pad will be full by the end of the day.
Sounds good.
Alrighty. Take care, Aaron.
All right, you guys take care.
Bye-bye. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of The Game Show. My thanks once again to game show producer and creator of the game That Was Awkward, Aaron Solomon, for being my guest today. Now, do you know what is definitely not awkward? Listening to this episode again, as well as all my previous episodes of The Game Show. Well, if you're wondering how to do just that, all you have to do is log on to www.soundcloud.com/Bradley_Clarke, that's BRADLEY_CLARKE/sets/The Game Show. That's www.soundcloud.com/Bradley_Clarke, that's BRADLEY_CLARKE/sets/The Game Show. Plus, don't forget to like The Game Show starring Bradley Clarke on Facebook and follow The Game Show starring Bradley Clarke on Twitter using the handle @TheGameShowBC and #TheGameShow. But of course, be sure to tune in next time for another exciting episode of The Talk Show, all about the world of television game and competition shows, The Game Show. For the 25th time, I'm Bradley Clarke, the Bradster, and I've got to go head off to my dance lesson with the $1 Million Dancers. Bye for now. The $100,000 Pyramid audio clips are courtesy of the ABC Television Network.
This edition of The Game Show was created and produced by Bradley Clarke and was recorded at the WRHU studios. This is Austin Angelo speaking.
The Game Show is a Bradley Clarke production. Get your game on.